In 2021, it was officially revealed that Rush had retired from the music industry. Anyone clicking on this video would very well know that iconic drummer Neil Peart, it's pronounced Peart, by the way, died of brain cancer, and it was shocking to many a Rush fan who had no idea he was suffering from this awful disease. I made a whole video tribute to Neil soon after he passed away. It would be cool if you gave it a watch. Anyway, Rush were done. Geddy and Alex very much did not want Rush to be done. If you watched 2015's Time Stand Still documentary, you get the vibe from Geddy and Alex that they wanted to keep the Rush machine moving indefinitely.
So one guy doesn't want to do that thing anymore that I love to do. That hurts. But there's nothing I can do about it, and that's part of the agreement.
There were several factors in Neil wanting to hang up his sticks for good, but I can imagine that his terminal prognosis was one of those main reasons. In January of 2020, at the age of 67, Neil Peart succumbed to his illness. Geddy and Alex were left with nothing but free time on their hands as they were essentially in retirement given their refusal to replace Neil with a new drummer. And boy, I am so glad they stuck with that oath because Neil is truly irreplaceable and that would have felt so wrong. Alex Lifeson tried to start a band that I feel never really took off called Envy of None, which I also did a video about. This was a band that, spoilers, sounded nothing like Rush. And they did the thing where a bunch of older dudes will bring in a young female vocalist to be the face of the band while the old guys stand in the background. But unfortunately, Alex Lifeson's guitar god status held no sway here. Geddy Lee, on the other hand, has been fairly busy since the conclusion of Rush, and none of it really involves music. Stick around as we see just exactly what Geddy Lee has been up to in his post-Rush life. This is Dancing with Ghosts. 2017 was the first significant Geddy sighting post-Rush. The prog rock godfathers Yes got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Geddy Lee was invited to play bass on their hit song Roundabout, with most of the original band members live on stage. This was definitely a cool little treat, and I'm sure Ged was pretty stoked to only have to play bass and not worry about contributing any vocals. There were times in Rush's career where Geddy Lee would be singing, playing the bass with his hands, and stomping on synth pedals with his feet all at the same time. Dude is freakishly ambidextrous. In 2018, Geddy put out a book called Big Beautiful Book of Bass, which was ostensibly a book showing off Geddy Lee's massive collection of bass guitars. Though I certainly consider myself a musician, I've never really been much of a gearhead. Though if you're a Rush fan and you play an instrument, there was definitely a time in your life where you would obsess over your favorite band member's gear. I was obsessed with Geddy and Alex's gear when I was a teenager, but as I learned more about all the various stomp boxes and effects processors out there, the mysterious allure of their specific equipment kind of wore off for me. I was a bit disappointed that this was the book that Geddy was putting his time into instead of, say, a memoir. But we'll get to that. A book tour followed the release of Geddy's bass book as it was a way for him to stay connected to his fans in some capacity. It may not have been a Rush tour, but he was still out there living in the limelight. Sorry, I had to do that. In 2022, Matt Stone and Trey Parker held a concert event to commemorate the 25th anniversary of their hit cartoon series South Park. Matt and Trey's favorite musical acts performed that night, including the band Primus, reprising the South Park theme song, which has become almost as iconic as the show itself. Later on in the night, Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee would make a surprise appearance with the house band, which included Matt Stone on drums. To my knowledge, this is the one and only person that has ever sat behind a drum kit to play a Rush song with the surviving members of the band. The song they chose, unfortunately, was Closer to the Heart, a song that has been vastly out of Geddy Lee's vocal range for over 20 years now at least. I mean, I certainly didn't expect them to play Subdivisions or Mystic Rhythms, but man, Ged's voice sounds awful on this song now. And I mean, God forbid they lower the key. Rush just won't do that. They refuse. This concert was all in good fun, though, so the expectations were low. But at the same time, you do get a small window into what a Rush concert might have sounded like in 2022 if the band had stayed together. But even if the band had lowered the keys of their songs, Neil's precise playing just wouldn't have been possible in the body of a man pushing 70 had he survived. In November of 2023, I finally got the book from Geddy Lee that I was waiting for, his effing memoir. In My Effing Life, Geddy provides a robust recollection of not only his entire time in Rush, but also his tumultuous family history of his Jewish parents fleeing persecution from the Nazis. In fact, a large portion of the first part of this book is dedicated to his family's struggle and is truly fascinating. These revelations really help give context to the phantoms of Geddy's family history and why perhaps he was trying to escape all of that through music. I personally prefer audiobooks, especially when they're read by the author, and this one does not disappoint. Geddy seems like one of the nicest rock stars in the industry, and his kind, laid-back personality definitely shines through in his readings of this memoir. In December of 2023, right on the heels of the release of his memoir, and seemingly out of nowhere, a documentary-style show on Paramount Plus was advertised called Geddy Lee Asks, Are Bass Players Human Too? This was an odd but exciting revelation, and I used the trusty free trial to consume all 4 episodes of the show and then cancel my subscription before my credit card was charged. Don't forget this simple but life-saving technique, kids. These companies prey on the fact that you'll forget to cancel. Anyway, the show itself is fine, I guess. As I said, there's only 4 episodes at 20 minutes apiece, and I don't really see a second season happening as this is a very niche topic catering to a very niche audience. A series like this would flourish on YouTube, but the budget would have to come straight out of Geddy's own pocket, and there wouldn't be a premier distribution service like a Paramount Plus or a Netflix. Most of the old-timer legacy media people still don't see YouTube as a viable option to peddle their various projects, which is unfortunate because the audience for a type of show like this can be found way easier on YouTube than on a streaming service. As much as I hate this dude's cheap clickbaiting tactics, Justin Hawkins of The Darkness figured out how to make the YouTube model work for him with his Justin Hawkins Rides Again channel, which has 500,000 subscribers and thousands upon thousands of views. It's low budget and low effort, but since people already knew who this guy is, he had a baked-in audience and is probably pulling higher ratings than Geddy Lee's show. But all of that blather aside, let me briefly touch on each episode of Are Bass Players Human Too? So the premise of this show is basically Geddy being the master bass player for Rush of almost 50 years, basically goes around and interviews people that he cites as influences in some way or another, and just kind of talks to them about, you know, their life and kind of their extracurriculars outside of being a bassist or whatever. On the first episode, Geddy Lee, not so surprisingly, visits his longtime friend Les Claypool of the prog/funk/alt-rock band Primus. Primus opened up for Rush in the early 90s, and the boys in both bands became kindred spirits with their odd musical flavors. I tried to capture some of the footage of these episodes to illustrate visually what this show looks like, but Paramount Plus blocked my screen recorder. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen. So you're just going to have to go off of my ability to spin a good yarn. Geddy Lee visits Les Claypool's Rancho Relaxo in Sonoma, California, where they do the sorts of things you might hear about in a country song: clearing out brush with a mini excavator, fishing, and riding around in a UTV. When writing this portion of the script, I learned some new things. For instance, I had to Google that this thing is called an excavator, and this redneck-looking golf cart was called a UTV, or Utility Task Vehicle. I never knew what those things are fucking called. I just called it a golf cart. Anyway, all of these episodes conclude with some kind of bass jam session, but they're really not anything to write home about, which is surprising given that these were 2 of my favorite bass players growing up and still are to this day. Maybe the jam sessions got left on the cutting room floor. On the second episode of this show, Geddy visits Metallica's Robert Trujillo and is shown around his Southern California digs, including Robert's interests in surfing, skateboarding, and the like. They try some street tacos and watch Robert's son's band play to a pretty full audience. Nepo baby. Sorry, had a cough there. Yeah, it was kind of mid, to be honest. On the third episode of this show, Geddy talks to Melissa Auf der Mauer. Mauer? I don't know. She was the bassist for Hole, but more notably, in my humble opinion, she replaced Darcy in the Smashing Pumpkins. Melissa was an odd choice in my opinion because she even admits on the show that she doesn't even play bass anymore, which is kind of sad, like when a musician just straight up doesn't play their instrument anymore. Well, much like Geddy, Melissa is Canadian and Canadians are fiercely loyal to one another, so that's pretty much how she ended up on the show. I don't recall there being any particularly interesting insight on this episode, but it was worth watching the first time around anyway. The final episode of this series is The Big Get, Nirvana's Chris Novoselic. Much like Melissa, Chris isn't really a bass player these days, as he's more into playing the accordion with his Oompa band, which is depicted in the show, but I can't show any of that footage on here because Paramount apparently doesn't believe in fair use. Chris and Geddy also can vegetables and all of the other old man hipster stuff a former grunge dude would do in their older age. Well, and fly a plane, which is kind of cool. If anything, this show just reminds me of how, for some people, music is just a phase of their life that passes through until they move on to their next venture. For instance, Geddy Lee would still be on stage to this day performing and writing new music, while Chris Novoselic was pretty much done with it altogether when Nirvana disbanded in 1994. Like I said, the show is okay. It's pretty wholesome, but a bit of a letdown if I'm being honest. The episodes breeze by, and there isn't much meat on the bone, especially given the high profiles of these bass players. You'd think there'd be something a bit more substantial here, but I think Ged just wanted an excuse to get out of the house. So, as you can see, Geddy Lee has definitely not been rotting away in a rocking chair since retiring from Rush. He even maintains his own Instagram page, which is brilliantly called Geddy Images. For anybody who has ever tried to source a picture off Google, you're going to inevitably run into that annoying-ass watermark that reads Getty Images. I swear they buy up all of the most usable pictures and sell them at a premium, so for Geddy Lee to name his Instagram Getty Images, it was quite clever. Anyway, hopefully you found this as a more wholesome, positive video to kick off 2025, or at the very least, you gotta admit that I'm not always such a negative cunt. Until next time, have a good rest of your night.